Dear colleagues, I would like to introduce a new discipline of science, engineering and practice that we call modelology. And this will be a keynote to the European Japanese Conference 2023. And I think you can now digest what is modelology. Models are used everywhere in life. In all phases, they are universal tools. Anything can become a model, but we need to know what is the use of a model. And for this reason, I would like to start with a thesis. Every object and every idea can be used as a model in an application scenario, as long it is useful in that scenario, and as long as it functions as an instrument in that scenario. I claim that models are works of art and thinking. They come in very diverse forms, but they are universal ones, and I think we need now a new discipline. My claim is also that models are already used for a long time. My earliest reference is so far ancient Egypt. If you look here, models are used for graves, for architecture, to present somebody. It means as a presentation model. Models can also be used to master something, as a mold, for instance, like in Egypt done. Or models can also be used in order to orientate somebody to behave in a proper form according to the culture accepted by everybody. They are used everywhere. They should not be called models, but they are used as models. The same is also if you look for art. Art models are very common. You see here Ambrogius' allegory of a bad government. That is a model. What means bad government? You have tyranny, you have arrogance, you have vanity, you have a number of figures that should be considered in a bad government. It is a model of a bad government. So you can reason now what means to have a bad government. Modelology is essentially the study of models and modeling, as well as model usage. It can be developed as an art or a craft, but essentially it should become a science. It contains a number of specific ingredients. Something might become a model. After a while, it is not a model anymore. So we have a journey. We might ask, what are the characteristics of something to become a model? What quality is expected? To what extent can a model be trusted? Which characteristics exclude something to be a model? To what extent is a model suitable or at least appropriate in a given application? And when not? That means in this case we develop now a study of models and modeling as well as model usage, and it is somehow based on our human knowledge and abilities handling our life cases. So far it is mainly craft or craftsmanship, but it should become a science. So, first of all, we should answer the question, what is a model? We use a generic notion of a model. A model is well-formed, adequate and dependable, and further, it is an instrument. It represents something and functions in a scenario for use. That looks very general, and I think we need to have a means how to adapt or how to develop a special notion of a model. We start with the configuration. Nature, mission, brand, strategy, tactics are given, and then you say, okay, fine, a disciplinary model according to this configuration is nothing else as a model that is well-formed, adequate, dependable, however, in the specific canon of our configuration. For instance, you can say now a conceptual database model or conceptual model is nothing else as a concise, purposeful consolidation of a set of concepts that are presented by means of terms in a predefined linguistic format. As such, it establishes a view of a given notion or knowledge space that is behind that. That means in this case you have nothing else as some kind of generic notions that can be configured, and finally it can be also then specialized to the specific needs what we want to have. That means in this case we have now a very specific treatment of models. First of all, we should say a model should be an instrument. That means you have something like an instrument being of something as an assignment. That means in this case we require that this should be suitable. Suitable according to the way we want to use the model as an instrument. An instrument can be now used as a model, but it should be adequate. I should explain what that means. And it should somehow believable or dependable. Believable means in this case we should have a justification. It should be corroborated, coherent, validated, stable, and of course it should have a sufficient quality to be used. And what we did now, we said, okay, fine, we have the generic notion, and then we can specialize according to our needs. Genericity is nothing else as a trick, and for this reason we can now have some kind of settlement, configuration, development guide of models. Let's do it. Let's start, first of all, with embedding the things that should become, the thing or idea that should become a model, into our landscape, into the application sphere, into a scenario. Then in this case, a model has nothing else as it plays a role in, I would call it again, application game as an instrument. It has a mission, it has a brand for the community of practice, and of course it has some nature and portfolio. Let's look for a practical example. A practical example could be, let's say, a banking application. We would like to develop an information system for banking applications that can be used by bankers. In this case, we have to accept the postulates, the habits, and anything that comes in the banking area into the application game. And of course, we would like to have a description first of all. But understanding should be negotiated, and we would like to paraphrase it. That would be the first step. The second step would be that we say, okay, fine, then we need to have a model. It is somehow formed for this scenario. It should function in this scenario. It should represent something like origins, of course, in the context, and it should be used for some concern in the community of practice, somehow have a profile that is somehow useful for our way. That means in this case we have something like a worksheet for developing a model. Okay, in our case for the description model in the banking application it is a description conceptual model with, of course, the database philosophy, and in this case we develop, of course, the structure, but we would like to have also means and functions for analysis, development and design, so that we can now discuss how our database application looks like. That would be the second step. Third step, we have to incorporate what is coming in the background, what is not given explicitly, but it is embedded deeply into our model according to the application sphere. That would be implicit knowledge, an implicit model in general, and it would be maybe the approach we choose. In our banking application, it would be okay, fine, accept how people are talking in the bank, what kind of ontology is used, what kind of organization theory is used, how modeling should go, and what is the modeling approach. For instance, in maybe 1, 2, 3, 5 until 8 phases. And of course, how we should somehow consider an engine on which we are implementing that. Okay, this would be the matrix. The matrix is implemented and behind. The next is configure. Inherit whatever you can inherit. We inherit, of course, the body of knowledge as a supporting means, with the concepts, with the knowledge, with anything what we can inherit in our application. And of course, we need, as the second part, also some kind of functionalization. And for this reason, we inherit the prowess human developed. And for this reason, we have now the two pillars, the body of knowledge and the tools enabling our process. How it would look like in our banking business. Of course, we inherit how a bank is operating, we inherit how a bank is organized, we inherit maybe our special understanding of a certain bank, and we inherit also the language to represent. Maybe it is an entity relationship language, maybe it is embedded into the database culture. That means we have some kind of inheritance. Okay, now we can go and say, okay, fine, our model is almost completely composed. We have the body of knowledge, we have the tools, we have the matrix, the implicit model, we have the approach, again, a part of the matrix, and of course, anything is somehow governed by the application sphere and the scenario. In our banking application, it would now look like that we develop a model describing, let's say, a certain understanding how a bank is operating, how accounts are handled or something like that by the bankers. Of course, we inherit what the bank thinks that would be useful. We inherit also the language for representation of models. And of course, we inherit the whole set of beliefs, even religious beliefs we have behind. In reality, we would like to have a description. We would like to have a proper understanding that is commonly agreed, and we should like to be able to paraphrase it so that we can have a banking application. That would be step-by-step development of models. In this case, we have, if we combine it now, nothing else as we start with a landscape, then we go with the worksheet, what kind of model we need, then we come with a matrix. The matrix is, of course, what is deeply inherited and what kind of approach we use. I think the German word Ansatz has made it also to English. For this reason, maybe we should use Ansatz. And we inherit whatever can be inherited by our world knowledge and our world prowess. Of course, we have maybe some canonic addings so that we can handle it a little bit deeper. That means in this case, we have something like a configuration table telling us what we should do in order to develop a model. That would be the development business. But models should be used. That means in this case, we should now consider what means using a model. Again, we might have the ability to go back to some kind of matrix, how we are using models. Or maybe we have usage frames. Apply a model, employ a model, operate a model, utilize a model. And of course, in this case, you can now directly say who is using this model, under which circumstances, how it is used as an instrument, how it can be used maybe in a proper form for our community of practice. That means we should consider what means really using a model. And again, our landscape helps us. It tells us what kind of usage we have in mind after developing this maybe description model. Using a description model could be, for instance, representation of our agreement. It could also be used for communication among all parties in the community of practice, based of course on shared and commonly understood terminology in a variety of forms. A description model could be also used for documentation of the achieved so far shared understanding. It could also mean that we have some maybe assessment means for analyzing against the landscape requirements and the domain interests. Or we could say, oh my goodness, my description model is nothing else as another source, another origin for a prescription model that extends it and embeds this description model into our realization landscape, into our machine, what kind of database machine we are using, what kind of infrastructure we are using, what kind of architecture in the application in general we are using. That means in this case we have a usage frame. Here I have again apply, employ, operate, utilize. We have a core understanding how usage comes with an agent. It should be an instrument, and of course it should serve the purpose. We have some extra thematic known core, and we take the same frame that people have been developing for model usage. This would be a general picture like this mind map, and again I would advocate that we are using some kind of framed approach. In general, we can distinguish 4 different kinds of usages of model suites. I say here model suites instead of model because of typically a model comes with a number of submodels or a number of tightly associated with each other models. That means in this case we have a model suite. We have, of course, first of all, a representation aspect. Everybody talks about it. Reflect, express, percept, display, explicate, whatever you would like to present. You might have also in sciences a foundations and intelligent aspect. Understand, formalize, make sense, comprehend, absorb. You might have also a realization and context aspect. That would mean we use a model to construct something. That is classically also true for computer science. However, we have another aspect that is long time overlooked, and it comes only into play now with our web applications. It is the interaction society aspect. Interact, socialize, have emotions, collaborate, orient, embed anything in the social beings. That means in this case you have something like a usage of models as an society, social tool. I claim that using a model is the main issue. And for this reason, a model should have the right utility. We can consider a good number of such utilities. For instance, you can say, okay, fine, for realization of, let's say, some kind of thoughts, some kind of description model, becoming later maybe a prescription model, we would like to use it for programming, development, for specification. We could also use it, let's say, for production, or let's say as an informative model. That means in this case we have now a number of mini stories we are using as a usage story for the model. That is another side model of the usage itself. Okay, in this case we have a good number of various uses. In the EGC conference in 2023 and 2021, I represented something on the rational usage. Rational usage is often taken as some kind of deduction or induction or abduction. In reality, however, it is plausible reasoning. It is approximative reasoning. And we have also a known rational model usage, mainly somehow covered by our way how we think and how we develop thinking. Beyond non-rational and rational model usage, we have also numerical usage, generative usage, documentation and information, etc., etc. That means in this case we have again a number of mini stories how a model is going to be used. We have in this case a number of such B-wave representations for this non-rational and rational usage, as well as for anything beyond. We have construction model usage, discovery model usage, learning, presentation, socialization, orientation. All this can be described in a proper way by using this kind of mini-story approach. How we can now explain that something is a really good model? A model should be, as we said in the beginning, something that is going to be used in a proper form as an instrument. It should be suitable, first of all. And it should be somehow appropriate. Appropriate has, in our case, two different sides. One is adequacy, one is dependability. Adequacy and dependability is somehow taken as a whole unity. Adequateness has been already considered in the past. Some papers write, or some books write, it should be based on a mapping from origins to the model. Or, in more general, we say it should be analog. It should be, of course, useful, and it should somehow allow us to restrict our attention. That means in this case we have something like a small game between adequacy and focus. That is a game. Analogy is, of course, a little bit more general reasoning. However, we would like also to be parsimonic. We would like to restrict our attention. And restrict our attention means in this case we should focus. Focus like we do in usual life. We say, okay, fine, anything outside my focus is not of interest. That means in this case we have some kind of game. Choose a proper analogy and restrict yourself by the focus, so that we can handle the model in a proper way. Otherwise we would have the full complexity of the entire world, and this would be not very useful. The same comes now with dependability. That is a problem that has been overlooked for a long time. That is nothing else as the foundation of the model being. We should believe in the model. We should rely on a model. Believing means we should have an explanation, a corroboration. It should be somehow, of course, coherent and not contradicting itself. It should not be consistent, at least coherent. And we should be able to reason why we believe in that model. That means we should have some kind of validation procedure. And of course we should not change the model whenever something is changing in our environment. It should be somehow stable and plastic, robust against unessential changes. That means in this case we would like to have a model we can really believe for a longer time. Another property is sufficiency in quality. That can be done in the same way as we do it in classical software engineering. We have a development quality, we have an internal quality, we have a quality of use, and for this reason we can now maybe reason what kind of quality we really need. And of course, additionally, we should have a dynamic quality. Dynamic quality in this case means to have something like a quality that stays over the time, at least for the time frame we would like to use that model. That means in this case we should be able to declare what it means to have a sufficient model that functions proper in a given scenario. We can use for quality assessment a number of criteria, for instance correctness, generality, usefulness, comprehensibility, novelty, and for this reason we might have 50 or more different criteria to consider. But do we need really 50? No, we don't need. Let's say for communication we would like to have that a model is useful and is simple, so that everybody can talk about it. And the rest, okay, is some kind of side quality we might use, but we don't need in this general form. We concentrate on simplicity and usefulness. So, how to master now this thing? Our finding says you should be able to support a model by the world knowledge. You should be also able to enable a model for usage. Behind that is some kind of matrix that is nothing else as an implicit model and an ansatz, or maybe an approach or methodology. In general, we start with the application sphere. In this application sphere, we have application scenarios. A model should be used for a certain issue. A model should be used by a community of practice. For this reason, we have now maybe some kind of fishbone diagram telling us what are the tasks, or more general or more specific, the problems we have to tackle. And then we have the usage space. In general, we would like to have a deliverable for our tasks. For problems, we might have a solution. That means in this case, we have something like a landscape that determines which kind of model we would like to use, and for this reason we have directly our worksheet for model usage with origins in context, with the results we would like to have. Of course, it is used as an instrument. It reflects the origins and it anticipates the results we would like to have. That means we have nothing else as information for the scenario and a functionalization for the scenario. That means in this case we have now a little bit more systematic element how to handle such things. We can start with a number of postulates and paradigms for modelology. I claim anything can be a model, but must not be a model. Models could use specifications or could be specifications. We need some kind of model-based utility, usage, and especially model-based reasoning. A model should be useful, should have a utility. We might have invariants that are transported from the origins to the results. In this case, you should handle these invariants as well. You can specify it using the classical rhetoric frame or maybe the W star H framework. Models have not to be complete, they should be only useful. And of course we need to have some facility to handle model suites in a proper form. Okay, in this case we have a number of ingredients. We have model composition and design, we have model usage, model-based reasoning and working, we have well-formatedness of models, we have model engineering, we might have a theoretical basis, and of course we need some kind of teaching methodology. These are the ingredients of the new discipline, Modelogy. In German language it is simply Modellkunde. Summarizing, we are heading towards a general foundation of modeling with Modelogy. Since we are lazy, we would like to use stereotyping. We have some reasoning schemata, and of course we should have also some kind of proof of concept for this new discipline. You have a number of videos I was putting on the YouTube channel Bernhard Thalheim, or you can read it in Academia Edu. You can read it also through ResearchGate, having collections of papers, starting with papers from 2009 until 2021. 2023 will be the 5th collection of papers. So, thank you for the attention, and I hope you enjoy now to see a new discipline that should be taught to everybody, already starting in the school, and continue until the end of your life. Thanks a lot, and I hope you will like this new discipline in a proper way.